So we've just put in the fuller right where we marked it out at 9 centimetres. The next step is to bring our spike out. We're going to use our cross peen, which will help move the steel perpendicular to the cross peen. So we'll bring it to the anvil, we'll strike it, and it's going to spread the material out rather than making it longer, which is more important at this point because we want the height in the blade. If you focus on making it longer now, you won't have enough material to make it wider. Ready to go? As you can see, we've just used the cross peen to draw that material down to get a taller blade, so more height. I'm going to go back in the fire now, continue that until we get to about down here. And once we have it down there, we can then draw out the length and get the shape that we want. We're going to continue using our cross peen on our hammer to get more height in the blade and then start drawing out the blade and getting ready to get our profile in. So we're now drawing the blade out. We've got our height down in the heel. It's still a little bit rough, but we'll tidy that up. The next step is to get the profile, which is the shape of the blade that we need. We want to try and forge that as close to our final dimension as possible. The next heat will come along. I'll draw this down a little bit more length, and I'll start making it kind of mimic the final blade shape. We're going to start profiling the blade now, so getting it close to our final shape. Bring it out to the fire, come straight to the horn. Set it down so we get the spine lined up with the handle, and then draw out the blade a little bit, work on our spine thickness, and start getting the kind of blade ready for final shaping. Alrighty, we're getting pretty close now. We've got our rough shape in. I made the bottom flat because as you do our next step, which is beveling, we're going to come along here to hit along the edge. And what happens when you hit along the edge? It likes to bow up like a banana. So this is called a preform, and it's to kind of get the shape right, so when you hit it, it goes to your final spot. Alrighty, so we've just done our beveling. You can see that the nose or the tip of your blade's kicked right up and bananaed up. So that preform's looking fantastic. So now we're going to do the twist for the handle. The most important thing to twist is that your heat is nice and even. You want the whole thing the same heat. The main reason being, if there's a hot spot, you'll twist faster. If there's a cold spot, you'll twist slower, so you get a different size twist. This can also come in effect when you clamp it in the vise, which we're about to do. The vise will suck the heat out of the piece of steel. So you've got to be in there, clamp it real quick, have your tools ready, and and just go for it. So I'm going to grab it now, we'll do the twist. What we can. Beautiful. So the blade's all done now, it's all forged, everything's straight, the twist is nice, bevel's in the centre, looking pretty good. The next step for me is I'm going to get this ready for heat treat. So we're going to heat it up to just above normal magnetic, which is about 815 Celsius, and that's going to help the steel kind of reset and get ready for a quite aggressive quench. Now railroad spike steel isn't the highest carbon steel, it's about 0.3% carbon at its highest. So it should hold an edge a little bit, but it won't perform as good as like a kitchen knife. So for like cheese knives, letter openers, or just like steak knife, it work quite well. But to get the best hardness we can out of it, we need to normalize it, reset the crystal structure inside the steel, and then quench it in water to get the maximum hardness out. So what I'm going to do now is turn the forge down and get it to the right temperature. So one trick I use is a piece of pipe, just a bit of a square or rectangle pipe. Put it in the forge. It makes a nice little chamber that has a really controlled heat. In your forge, your burner hits one side of the forge tends to get hotter. This kind of helps balance it out, so you get a nice even heat across your whole blade, and you don't get any hot spots. So now we're ready to put our blade in to normalise. So we've refined our profile now, we've ground it back down nice and flat with the rest of the handle. We come in, made a nice flat spot, and we put the belly of the blade in as well. The next trick now is to come in and grind in our bevels, and our bevels will come up to about here or so on the blade and bring down the edge down to about 1 millimeter thickness. If you go any thinner than 1 millimeter, when you go to heat treat any blade, it starts to bend and twist and warp. So we don't want that, we want to avoid that as much as possible. So leave it nice and thick on the cutting edge, and then we'll refine it after we heat treat. So put it back in the forge, get it to critical temperature, and we'll chuck it in the water, and hopefully we get a hard blade out of it. So we've now got the blade in the fire again. This is going to be the hardening stage of our knife making. So basically we need to get it to critical temperature. For most steels it's around 815 to 850 Celsius depending on what alloy you're using. This is probably around the 1035 steel kind of type. We should get some hardness out of it. One good test is a magnet, so I've got a strong magnet down here. When a certain type of metals which stick to magnets get to the right temperature, they don't stick to the magnet anymore. So it's a good indicator that you're in the kind of right range where you need to be. The more accurate way to do this would be to get a thermocouple installed into your forge so you can actually get a proper reading. I don't have one at the moment, so we're just going to go by colour and by magnet test basically. This is the water quenching steel. Anything above kind of 1075 or even 1075 itself is an oil quenching steel. But because this is a lower carbon, water's the way to go. So I'm just going to check the magnet. It's not sticking. back in the fire for 5 seconds to reheat that edge. And we'll go into the water quench and slice the water. You want to go for about 9 seconds or so. Check the straightness. You also want to keep an ear out as well, because you don't want to hear any pings or dings. That means you've split your metal or it's cracked. Came out pretty good. So what we've done, we've changed crystal structures within the steel. We've gone for a soft state of steel called perlite. We've brought it to its transitional stage called austenite. And when we quenched it in the water quench, we've taken it up to what they call martensite, which is the hard state of steel. Usually a good indicator is that you see the grey kind of scale popping off here and here. It's a good indication that you've kind of got there. Another good test is the file test, where you get a file and if it skates across and sounds like glass, you're in the right kind of spot. Because this is a lower carbon steel, it probably will still bite, but I think we're just looking at that. I think we're in the butter zone here. So the next thing to do now is to clean it up. We'll go back and refine our bevels and brush it up and wax it, and that's good to go. One thing to mention as well about this lower carbon steel is that you probably don't need to temper it. With high carbon steels, if you quench it, it will be as brittle as glass, and you need to bring that brittleness back by putting it in the oven to get more toughness back into your steel. But because we're such a low carbon, I think we're pretty well safe just to go ahead with it. When I make these knives and sell them, I sell them as a cheese knife. They're not going to go breaking open car doors and opening cans and stuff. The steel's just not designed to do that. It's designed to hold down a railroad track. So we're going to go straight ahead now, back onto the 60 grit to rough in our grinds, and then refine it back on the 120 grit, and then brush it up and wax it, and we'll be done. So what I'm going to do now is just wire brush the back end of it. I use a wire cup. This one's getting a bit small, but still do the trick. And this should blast off all that scale and give us a nice kind of forged finish, nice and smooth, and yeah, it just looks great. So I love to finish my ironwork with one of these. So I've just clamped it nice and tight. Just be careful with these, they do flick little metal wires everywhere, hence the glasses, respirator. The more the better basically. But I'm just going to hit this up now.
It's Brad. It's Brad. Brad the blacksmith.
So I just brushed it up. I've got all that dark scale off. It's kind of highlighted some of the sections of the steel, give it like kind of nice shine to it, but still keep the forged finish. Basically in a nutshell, that's ready to wax up and sharpen. It's good to go. So I'm just applying some wax. This is axe wax, so food grade kind of wax. This prevents basically oxygen and water getting onto the bare metal surface basically and start making rust. So this is still pretty warm from the wire wheel. So basically I'll put it on there, let it kind of set for a couple of minutes, wipe off the excess, and that will give us a protective barrier. Now if you start chopping up things like tomatoes, limes, lemons, which are quite acidic, you will start rusting your steel. But if you kind of look after it, you'll get that patina, which is like a pretty rust, and it will protect the blade and you won't need to wax it as much. That's our finished railroad spike knife, hand forged and then finished up on the grinder. If this is something you're interested in, please hit me up on my website, www.bradtheblacksmith.com. I'm also on social media at Brad the Blacksmith on Instagram and Facebook.